You belong with your terrorist home friends. That's what was sent to me. That's just a piece of it. But that's nothing compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day. And that's why they have my support.
19 seconds ago, Lindsey Graham did something inside the Senate Judiciary Committee chamber that no one in that room, not the stenographers, not the 4 FBI attorneys seated directly behind Kash Patel, was prepared for. He reached into a manila envelope stamped with orange classification borders, slid out a single sheet of paper and placed it face up on the witness table directly in front of the FBI director. Not handed it, placed it, slowly, the way a chess player sets down the piece that ends the game. The document was a court-authorized FISA surveillance log, dated March 9th of last year. And the name printed at the top of the log, the subject of the surveillance, was a sitting United States senator. But that is not what made Kash Patel's jaw lock in place for 4 full seconds, caught on every camera in that chamber. What made his right hand move flat against the table, pressing down as though he needed something solid to hold on to, was the second name Graham read aloud. The name of the person who had ordered that surveillance file sealed, reclassified, and permanently removed from the FISA court's public disclosure queue 11 days before this very hearing. Patel's own name, on his own order, with his own authorization stamp. The hearing had been scheduled as standard judiciary oversight, routine, quarterly, the kind of session that Washington reporters cover on rotation because nothing ever actually happens. Patel had arrived at 9:22 a.m., flanked by a legal team carrying pre-approved answers in color-tabbed binders. He had sailed through the first hour and 40 minutes without visible strain. Cyber threats, border enforcement metrics, domestic extremism protocols. He gave the answers his team had rehearsed, measured, confident. The kind of confident that comes from knowing no one in the room has anything you haven't already wargamed against. Then at 11:09 a.m. Chairman Dick Durbin recognized Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. People outside Washington sometimes underestimate Graham. The drawl does that. So does the folksy posture, the slightly rumpled suit, the reading glasses he keeps pushing up his nose, the way he opens with something that sounds almost like small talk. But Graham spent 21 years in the United States Air Force JAG Corps. He tried cases in military courts. He prosecuted. He defended. He learned in those proceedings that the most dangerous question in any interrogation room is not the one that sounds dangerous. It is the one that sounds like housekeeping. Graham leaned forward and began. Director Patel, help me understand something basic about how the FISA process works at your level. When the FBI applies for a court-authorized surveillance order targeting a United States person who is ultimately responsible for the accuracy of the supporting affidavit, Patel's posture was still easy. The question felt procedural. It was. The director bears accountability for all submissions to the FISA court made under Bureau authority. Graham nodded, writing nothing. Just nodded. And if information in that affidavit were later found to be materially incomplete, or if exculpatory evidence existed that was not disclosed that would constitute a defective submission, correct? Patel's attorneys exchanged a glance. Fractional. Fast. But 2 reporters in the press gallery saw it. Under established legal standards, a failure to disclose material information could affect the validity of the order. Yes, right. Graham said it the way you say it when the other person has just confirmed something they did not mean to confirm.
And Page responds a couple of months later, he's not ever going to be President, right? Talking about Trump. Struck, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Is it fair to say that the people in charge of investigating Crossfire Hurricane hated Trump's guts?
Well, you don't have to take my word for it. That statement, along with the statements from the sources.
Are those days over in the FBI, you hope?
Well, if they're not, they will be.
Okay, good. You know who Carter Page was?
I do, Senator.
Do you know that the FBI secured warrants against him on 4 different occasions?
Yes, Senator.
Do you know that the information that they relied upon came from the Steele dossier?
I do.
Was it you that were able to find out that the Steele dossier was a bunch of crap?
Yes, Senator. We followed the money, and we exposed the fraud that was the sealed dossier.
And the primary subsource was Ignor Danchenko, right?
That's correct, Senator.
And he was actually a Russian analyst.
That's right.
Are you aware that in January he told the FBI that, let's see, what did he tell the FBI? Still had no proof to support the statements, then it was just talk. The primary subsource explained to the FBI that his information came from word of mouth and hearsay, conversations he had with friends over beers, and some of the information were statements he heard made in jest. And he told the FBI this in January
That's
of
right.
2017. And they got 2 more warrants after that.
That's correct.
Are you aware that the FBI had volumes of information that the Steele dossier was a bunch of bullshit and nobody ever told anybody at the top?
I am, sir. We exposed
Or
it.
they lied about being told.
That's correct.
So are you aware of the fact that the FISA court rebuked the FBI? Are you aware of the fact that an FBI lawyer went to jail because he misled the court by manipulating a email from the CIA?
I am.
Do you believe that Crossfire Hurricane was one of the most disgusting episodes in FBI history of a corrupt investigation led by corrupt?
He opened his folder. Director Patel, I want to ask you about FISA application file number FS10272400240391. Are you familiar with it? The first tell arrived here. Not dramatic. Not a tremor. Just the particular stillness of a face deciding very quickly how much it knows. Senator, without reviewing the specific case number, I would not want to characterize. You reviewed it on March 3rd of last year. Graham's voice stayed flat. Your digital signature appears on the review log. The timestamp is 6:44 p.m. So I'll ask again. Are you familiar with file FS22406124031? 3 seconds of silence. I may have reviewed materials associated with that file as part of routine director-level oversight. Good. Graham reached into the envelope again. This time he held up a 2-page document, turning it so the FBI seal at the top was visible to the cameras. Because what I have here is the internal review notation attached to that file after your review, and the notation is not routine. It is marked Priority Reclassification Director Override. It instructs the Bureau's FISA Compliance Unit to remove 1,840 pages of associated surveillance records from the court's public disclosure queue and seal them under a national security hold requiring director reauthorization every 90 days. Graham set the document down. Now, who authorized that hold? I authorized the reclassification based on a national security assessment indicating that disclosure of those materials posed potential risk to ongoing operations. Ongoing operations. Graham said it slowly, the way you repeat something to make sure the room heard it. Director, the FISA court's own oversight panel reviewed file FS227Y 6 weeks ago. I have their findings here. He produced a third document. Their conclusion, and I am going to read this carefully so I do not misstate it, was that, quote, no active investigative predicate was identified that would justify the continued withholding of the materials sealed under Director Patel's March 14th reclassification order. He looked up. The FISA court's own panel found no legitimate basis for your hold. So let me ask you again, what ongoing operation were you protecting when you sealed 1,840 pages of surveillance records? Patel's left hand, which had been resting open on the table, closed slowly into a partial fist. Not aggressive. The kind of closing that happens when a body is doing something the mind has not approved. Senator, the court's oversight panel operates with a necessarily limited view of operational context. My assessment incorporated intelligence equities that cannot be fully disclosed in a non-classified setting. Graham set down his pen. Director, I've been practicing law and trying cases for a combined 30-plus years between the Air Force and the Senate. I know what it sounds like when someone is giving me an answer that is technically responsive and substantively empty, so let me try a different approach. He reached into the envelope one more time. This time what he produced was not a document. It was a printed phone log. 1 page. He held it up. This is a communication record from the FBI Director's office. February 28th of last year, 13 days before your reclassification order. It shows a 31-minute call placed from your direct office line to the main switchboard of a private legal firm in Virginia. The firm's name is Meridian Federal Strategies. Do you know who their primary client was at the time of this call? Patel's mouth opened, then closed without producing a word. One of his attorneys leaned in to whisper. Patel gave the smallest shake of his head. Senator, I engage in regular legal consultations as a standard part of Bureau operations. Meridian Federal Strategies represented 3 of the 38 names contained in the surveillance records you subsequently sealed. Graham, let that land. 38 names appear in those 1,840 pages, Director. You made a 31-minute phone call to a firm representing 3 of them. 13 days later, you sealed the file. The room did not erupt. It did the opposite. It went so quiet that the ventilation system in the ceiling became audible. That is the kind of silence that does not come from emptiness. It comes from a room full of people processing the same information simultaneously and arriving at the same place. If you are watching this right now and you feel like the ground just shifted slightly, subscribe. Hit the bell, because what you just heard is not the end of this hearing. It is the beginning of a much larger accounting, and I am going to cover every development as it breaks. Patel was visibly perspiring now. The studio lighting in the chamber is unforgiving under those circumstances. His skin had taken on a particular quality, not pale exactly, but flat, the way a face looks when blood has pulled inward. His breathing was audible to the 2 senators seated closest to him. Director Patel. Graham's voice had dropped. Quieter is more dangerous in his register. Of those 38 names in the sealed surveillance file, how many are currently serving in elected or appointed federal positions? Senator, I cannot confirm or characterize the identities contained in a sealed. I'm not asking you to name them. I am asking you to confirm a number. How many of the 38 individuals whose records you sealed hold current federal positions? Patel's jaw tightened visibly. You could see the muscle working. I am not in a position to confirm specifics related to sealed materials in an open hearing. You sealed those materials. Graham's voice was almost gentle now. You created the seal. You signed the order. You reauthorize the hold every 90 days. Director Patel, these are your files. You know what is in them. I am asking you in front of this committee and in front of every American watching how many of the people whose surveillance records you buried are currently working inside the federal government. Patel looked at his attorneys for the 3rd time. Both of them had the expression of people who understand that no answer exists that is better than the silence already filling the room. Senator, releasing any information about the identities or positions of individuals in a sealed counterintelligence file without proper declassification authority would itself constitute a federal violation, and Graham held up one hand, palm out, the military gesture for stop. Director, here is what the record will show when this hearing concludes. He began counting on his fingers. The cameras caught it. On February 28th, you called a law firm representing subjects of your own bureau's surveillance operation. On March 14th, you used director-level override authority to seal 1,840 pages of records associated with that operation. On March 22nd, the FISA Compliance Unit submitted a routine disclosure notice. On March 23rd, you personally countermanded that notice with a written order that your own staff flagged as procedurally irregular. That flag is in the file. Your staff raised it, in writing, and you overruled them. Graham paused. His reading glasses caught the light. That is not a national security decision, Director. That is a pattern. And patterns have a habit of explaining themselves. He reached into the envelope one final time. He removed a single sheet and slid it to the center of the table without ceremony. This was submitted to my office by a bureau attorney under whistleblower protection 4 days ago. It is an internal compliance memo from the FISA unit dated March 21st. The subject line reads, Potential Procedural Irregularity Director Authorization Override FS 2024-004-0391. The memo documents the sequence I just described, written by career attorneys inside your own bureau. People who believe something was wrong enough to put it in writing and route it through whistleblower channels. Graham leaned back. I will be entering all of these documents into the congressional record this afternoon. I will be formally requesting that the DOJ Office of Inspector General open an immediate review of the reclassification decision, the communications log, and the procedural override. And I will be requesting that the FISA Court's Oversight Panel be given unredacted access to FS 2024-0391 in its entirety. He looked directly at Patel. Director, I gave you several opportunities today to give this committee a straight answer. You chose a different path. That is your right. But I want you to understand something clearly. Those 1,840 pages exist. The phone log exists. The compliance memo exists. The whistleblower exists. I did not build this case today. Your bureau built it. I am simply reading it back to you. He closed the folder. The surveillance records you sealed are not gone. They are in a court system that has now been alerted to a potential irregular override by its own panel. The 38 names in those pages are not protected by your reclassification order any longer. They are protected by the fact that nobody has asked the right questions yet. I intend to ask them. Patel sat without moving for 11 seconds. The C-SPAN clock is visible in the corner of the broadcast frame. 11 seconds is a very long time when someone is supposed to be defending their integrity. He said nothing. His hands were flat on the table. His eyes were fixed on a point somewhere between Graham and the middle distance, that specific unfocused look that appears on faces when a mind is working through a catastrophe faster than speech can follow. 3 things happened in the same 24 hours after that hearing adjourned. The clip reached 8 million views before midnight. 2 senior FBI officials placed calls to committee staff that were logged as unscheduled, and the FISA court docketed an inquiry into override authorization FS 2024-33910-391 under emergency review status. The 38 names are still sealed tonight, but the seal has a crack in it now, and cracks in Washington have a way of becoming something much larger very quickly. Lindsey Graham didn't accuse anyone of a crime today. He didn't have to. He laid out a phone call, a timeline, a sealed file, and a memo written by people inside the bureau itself. Then he let the silence do its work. That silence is still working. Stay close.